Hey guys, isn't this fun? I lost all my lightings. This is a challenge for me not to say so many words. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Bookmas. As you can see, we're in the car today. I thought it'd be fun to sit in my car and talk about all of my reads from 2025. I feel like this has been the most transformative reading year for me. I have never read more and more diverse genres, and honestly, it makes my heart so happy. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about all my 2025 reads. But I did want to add a little twist because I don't want to sit here and yap about every single book. I mean, I've done all of my wrap-ups, so if you want to know my in-depth thoughts on each book and my actual review I put in Goodreads and Fable, go ahead and check out my wrap-up videos. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of almost rapid fire these today with a little yes, no, or maybe. This is very popular on TikTok and I thought I would bring it to YouTube. I think without further ado that we should go ahead and just get into it. I did go ahead and get a little drink today. I got a coquito chai. So I didn't want to get a coffee, so the guy kind of recommended me to try, and I love coquito. I make it every year with my family. Honestly, it's very delicious but intensely sweet. It's just so much like coconut and sugar that it's a little overwhelming. So I've been taking like teensy beansy sips and I don't think I'm gonna finish it all, but it's actually super delicious. So we're gonna be sipping on this while we talk about our reads. So go ahead, grab your favorite drink and let's chit chat about my 2025 reading year. Can you see all these people walking by? Yeah, this is really scary filming in like public, even though it's in my car. It's like the safety of my car. So I'm just gonna keep yapping your ear off. It's another gloomy day, hence this very gloomy lighting. I pulled it up. The very first book I finished in 2025 was Daughter of Mine by Megan Miranda. I finished it January 3rd. I think I would say maybe if you are a avid thriller or mystery reader, then it's probably a maybe. And if you're not and you're new to thrillers, I would say yes. It was very easy to read, follow along with, and I read it really, really fast. And even though this was the first book I read this year, I actually still remember a lot of it, which is a good telltale sign that it was a very good thriller. It just did have some of those little moments where if you read a lot of thrillers, it kind of has that structure and you're just, you know, it's not the best thriller out there, but it was actually very, very good. See, the thing is, I would love to do yes or maybe, but I literally yap so much I can't close my mouth and stop talking. This is a challenge for me not to say so many words. And then at the end of January, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I would say yes. It was a really good romantasy. It was my very first deep dive into a fantasy world or romantasy ever. It was really easy to follow along, very digestible, even though I struggled a little bit to understand this whole fae thing. I got it down. I remember reading this and I thought fae was specifically created by Sarah J. Maas, and I didn't know that it was this like universal term that a lot of fantasy authors also use. I just thought that she created. I was like, wow, this is like Harry Potter. Like, she created all of these definitions and words and all this stuff, but it was just my very first deep dive into it. But I definitely would say yes. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but if you're new to fantasy or romantasy, I definitely would say yes. It's very easy to get into and a very popular book. So if you are confused, there is a lot of stuff you could find on TikTok or literally the internet to explain things for you, because I had to do that sometimes throughout the series. And even if you're not new to all that world, I feel like it still would be fun as long as you know that it is a romantasy and not as heavy on fantasy. Those are all the books I read in January. You're gonna see this progression. I talked about in my book journal. I went from like reading 2 books a month to 8. Don't worry, we'll have a lot more books to get through. Then in February, the very first book I finished was The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. I think anything Lynn Painter writes is an immediate yes for me. The way she can write a YA, it makes me feel like I'm 16 again. I don't know how she does it. I had a friend recently just read Better Than the Movies. She completely felt like she was back in high school. It's just so funny the way that she can weave words together to make it understandable without being as cringy as some of those other YA romance books I've read before. So I would say yes to this one. It's very fun. It repeats Valentine's Day over and over again, so this is perfect in February, hence why I read it in February. So this is a good one to look out for when you want to read it during the season. I also read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This one is also an immediate yes. I love the way that she can craft and write words. It's so stinking beautiful, and she has that infamous quote. Let me pull it up This is me advertising this book to you, and it says here, the love story sold us the wrong thing. The best kind of love doesn't happen on moonlit walks and romantic vacations. It happens in between the folds of everyday life. It's not grand gestures that show you how you feel. It's all the little secret things you do to make her life better that you never tell her about. Taking the end piece of the bread at breakfast so she can have the middle piece for her sandwich when you pack her lunch. Making sure her car always has gas so she never has to stop at the pump. Telling her you're not cold and to take your jacket when you are in fact very, very cold. It's watching TV on a rainy Sunday while you're doing laundry and turning your light off when she's fallen asleep reading. Sharing pizza crust and laughing about something the kids did and taking care of each other when you're sick. It isn't glamorous, it isn't all butterflies and stars in your eyes, it's real. This is the kind of love that forever is made of. Because if it's this good when life is draining and mundane and hard, think of how wonderful it will be when the love songs are playing and the moon is out. Every single time I hear this quote, it makes me want to giggle and jump up and down like a little 7-year-old girl, because this is such a good representation of love. It makes you feel giddy the way that she can just make it seem like it isn't grand gestures, it's the everyday life, but that's what makes it fun. The whole story was super fun, super entertaining. I highly recommend. It follows Justin and Emma, and they both believe that they have a curse and that every single time that they break up with someone, the person that they broke up with ends up getting married, so they feel like they're the problem. They're always the before the other person gets married. They find each other over Reddit, and you get to watch as it unfolds, and Justin is such an amazing mailman character. I love him so much. Everything he did, absolutely perfect. Additionally, in February, I read A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book of the ACOTAR series. Also, yes, up there as one of my favorite books out of the whole series. I feel that the romance part of it really escalated very well in this book. The storyline of the romance was phenomenal. I don't think I really explained what the ACOTAR series is about. It's basically about this girl, Feyre, and she ends up killing a fae, and she's taken to the fairyland because she killed a fae, and so she's taken, and her captor ends up basically falling in love with her, and you get to follow as she understands this magic land and being human in a fae land and all this fun stuff. And there's a whole lot of drama and a whole lot of stuff that goes down that makes it very, very interesting. Either way, I highly recommend A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury. I feel like once you get into the series, you absolutely fall in love. I feel like with the first one, you're kind of taking it as a grain of salt, and then the second one is really when you get invested into the story. At least for me, I felt that I knew the characters a lot more, and it actually made me feel connected to them, and I was rooting for them, and they were my best friends. In March, I finished Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. It took me a very long time to read this book. That's all I remember. I think it took me close to 3 months to finish, and I definitely would probably say no. I know a lot of people loved it. For me personally, I didn't connect with the characters. The story dragged on. I feel like there was a lot of descriptive moments that didn't really matter to me. I still remember a lot of the story. It's basically about these two people who knew each other from childhood. They grew up and made a video game together, and so it kind of follows that storyline. For me, it just didn't hit. I'm losing my son here. I need to hurry this up. Oh my gosh, I forgot. How could I forget? In February, I read Beartown by Frederick Bachman. Immediately 100,000% yes. If you've never seen one of my videos before, I literally scream off the rooftops about this book. It's so phenomenal, so amazing. I think every single person on this planet should read it. It's basically about this hockey town. It follows a lot of perspective of people in the town, and there's this really big championship hockey game. And for each person in the town, it means something entirely different. You get to follow along as you uncover their secrets, uncover the town secret. This really big event happens at the end of the book, and the way he writes, the way he crafts the story is something I've never read before. I applaud him for being the most talented writer with writing very minimal sentences. He can write 4 words and it has such an impact, and the way he repeats sentences throughout the book and each time it has a different meaning is actually crazy to me. I think that's why I literally had goosebumps the first time I read this book. So of course in March I read the second one, which is Us Against You by Frederick Bachman. Also immediately, yes, it follows the same exact town. After this crazy big event, it's the aftermath of it, everyone's perspective in the town, and it's just as good. I don't even know what more I can say about the amazingness of Frederick Bachman. If you've never experienced it before, this is your sign to go ahead. And he has a lot of amazing books out there, so even if this doesn't appeal to you, there's a lot more that you could pick up, and I bet you any one of them you would love. I read The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden. This is the second book of the Housemaid series. Probably would say maybe. If you're a person who needs to feel satisfied for reading an entire series, like me, I literally can't not finish a series even if I don't really love it. And this is what happened with this one. I couldn't really visualize what was going on. It still was a Frida McFadden, fast-paced, easy reading, but for me, the story could have ended with the first one, so I'm really confused why there are 2 more after it. And I did just buy the 3rd book recently in my very first Bookmas. As you can see, I do have a problem where I have to finish the series, but I would say maybe. Housemaid, yes. The second one, maybe. Then I read Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. If you're looking for a cozier mystery, as in it's more slow paced, it's not as fast paced as a Frida McFadden, I would say, but you're kind of strolling throughout the town, you're seeing the creepy things, you're kind of looking for a little bit, but you keep on strolling. If that's the kind of mystery you like, I definitely would say this is a yes. If you're more of a person who wants these choppy, let's get to the point, let's solve this intricate storyline, I would say maybe. Depending on the kind of thriller reader you are, I would say your answer would lead one way or the other. For me, overall, it was a pretty good book. This is one of those books I remember pretty vividly, but throughout the book, I thought it was kind of just okay. I read a lot of books in March. As we continue, I read The Stranger in the Lifeboat by Mitch Albom. This one, I definitely would say yes. I love Mitch Albom. The way he writes is something so special, kind of like Frederick Bachman, where he writes these stories that have a lot of meaningful impact behind it, and it's almost like a self-help without it being self-helpy, because he tells you the self-help ideas in weaving it into a fictional story, so it makes it feel less like he's yelling at you and more being like, well, if you see this person, this is how their life ended up, so maybe you shouldn't do that. Next, I have Sunrise on the Reaping by Susan Collins, and I would say yes, 100%. This book was phenomenal. This is probably one of my favorite books up there this year. It's actually insanely perfect, and if you haven't read the Hunger Games series, this is the last one. This is about Haymitch. The movie's gonna come out in 2026, so this is your sign that you must read it. I am literally saying this is a yes. Put this on your TBR now. In April, of course, I read A Court of Wings and Ruin, the very 3rd book. I would say yes, just because it still goes through a series, but maybe for the fact that it was very long. There was a lot of talks about war. I guess this would be a little bit more of the fantasy side of the romantasy aspect of this book. I still really liked it. I read it pretty fast and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It just felt like there was a lot of descriptive history that obviously was important. It just felt a little lengthy for me at times, but overall, yes, because it's still part of a series. I read Powerless by Lauren Roberts in April. I would say yes for a good time. You know what I mean? You're coming into it knowing that this is a lighthearted romantasy. It's fun, it's twisty, kind of giving that old feeling of Divergent or Hunger Games. This book is right up that wheelhouse. If that's something that you're kind of wanting, a little bit more escapism, then this book would definitely be a yes. It's not going to be this kind of like heavier, impactful book. You're just there to have a good giggle and to get a little bit stressed out about some of the characters and what's going on. And if you don't know, this book follows a girl who doesn't have powers in a land full of elites that do have powers, and so she's been faking the fact that she does have powers to save herself from being killed, and so you get to follow that. She falls in love with an ordinary hunter, essentially, and you get to watch that unfold as they know they can't be together, but really want to be together. In May, I read A Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and I would say this is a yes. This isn't a typical Emily Henry book though, especially after kind of deep diving into some of her other books. This follows more of like a Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo sort of vibe. So we're getting more about this older woman and her past rather than a very specific romance. The only note I would say is that I hate how fast the romance kind of started for the younger couple in the story. It was just immediately like they fell in love and they started making out. So that's kind of what veered me off a little bit from this book. I would say yes for the feelings that it kind of reminded me of the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and that is one of my favorite books. But if you're looking for a actual romance, I would probably say no. Then I read Happy Place by Emily Henry, and I would say maybe. I know a lot of people love this book. I didn't connect to it as much, and maybe it's because I was having the younger YA perspective, so I wonder if I read it now, even though it has only been a couple months. I feel like I've grown a lot in my reading, but at the time I'm just gonna go with my maybe. I remember not liking Harriet as much as I wanted to, and she kind of irritated me at times. That's why I say maybe, because I love to be in love with the female main character, and I don't like when I watch them do things that I personally just kind of find, ugh, you know what I mean? I'm gonna clump the next bit of these, but I read the Summer I Turned Pretty series back to back to back in like 5 days. And I'm gonna say maybe if you are younger and you want that feeling, or you're very new to reading, I would say yes for this book. But if you're a seasoned reader or you're not particularly looking for that young YA, I would probably say no, just for the writing style, the story, things like that. I read The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. This one's a yes. I feel like this book has been around for so long. So many people have read this book, and obviously there's a reason for that. I specifically made a whole video about this book, what I learned from it. And again, same thing as The Stranger in the Lifeboat, he weaves these important aspects of life that make it so interesting, makes us remember why we're on this earth, why we're important as human beings, and why you matter. Highly recommend reading this book. I read A Court of Frost and Starlight. It's the little novella in the ACOTAR series, and honestly, again, I would say yes just because it's part of a series, but really wasn't that important. It kind of put me in a book slump, and I probably would say no. I love the Christmassy aspect. It didn't really do anything for me. Then I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and my love for reading reignited. This book is an immediate yes. If you're looking for a romance and you want something fun, this book is it. But there are moments of real life stuff. It's so beautiful. The way Ashley Poston, she always implements some sort of magical realism element, and in this book, it basically follows Clementine, and she inherits her aunt's apartment, and every time she walks in, she never knows if she's going to be 7 years in the future or 7 years in the past, and she falls in love with a guy from 7 years in the past. And when I tell you this is the most phenomenal book, I didn't know how we were going to get this romance to work, and it was so beautiful and it was so perfect, and I wouldn't change a single thing about this book. Highly recommend, even if you don't like romance. This book is so fun, so giddy, so laughable, and amazing. Then I read the second book of Better Than the Movies, which is Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. I would say yes. Again, Lynn Painter has such a way of making reading fun. That's the most perfect way I can describe why I love her writing and love reading her books. I always know I'm gonna laugh. I always know I'm gonna have a good time. And this is the two main people who fell in love in high school, now in college, and so you understand a little bit older aspect of them, and the way that she made it from high school to college, but still made it fun and still made it feel like now at this point, I feel like I'm in college when I was reading it. Exactly what a book needs, and I highly recommend, especially after reading the first one. This is a good follow-up, so yes. I read Fearless by Lauren Roberts, and I probably would say maybe just to continue a series. Again, me and my psychotic brain needs to finish a series, but honestly, after the first one, I think you're good. I don't think you need to read on. I've been avoiding reading the last one. I want to read it just to read it, just to, you know, feel that feeling of finishing a series. I feel like I've said that 1,000 times. It's all right. I think the first one as a standalone would have been so perfect. If you really love the story and want to know where that cliffhanger was going, I would say, of course, read the book, but just know it's not the best. I read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. 100,000% yes. This probably was my favorite book out of the whole series. The way that Nesta was portrayed, the way I felt so seen, the way I felt like I was looking in the mirror, how strong and powerful her character is. She's my favorite character. I am such a Nesta stan, and I constantly think about this book and what it made me feel and how it made me feel. I know you have to get through the whole series to read it, but it's so worth it. It was a really long book, like 700, 800 pages, and I would read 1,000 pages more of it because of how well it was written, how well she depicted depression and grief, and those feelings, and everything about it was so amazing. You have to read it. That's it. That's your homework. You have to read it. I read Society of the Snow, which is basically a telling of the true story that happened in the Andes Mountain in 1970 something, I believe, where a plane crashed with a whole bunch of soccer players, and then they survived in the snow for 74 days, I believe. I would say yes if you want to get into nonfiction. I think this is a really good book to fall into. It's definitely heavy, obviously, because there is real life events, and so it feels obviously more impactful and real because it did actually happen. But the way the story was written, with it weaving what happened during the mountain and where they ended up being, was really cool. It was almost like a journalistic book, and I really liked that. Following it along made it very easy, made it very digestible. I feel like I learned a lot about humanity and what it means to be a human. I feel like I took a lot more out of it than I thought I would, so I definitely would highly recommend if you love a good nonfiction or if that story interested you. In August, I read Ninth House. I would say yes. This is my first dive into a dark academia, more fantasy book, and I loved it. At first, it definitely took a little bit to get into, but once you get into it, it's really fun. So even if you're new like me to that genre, I promise you, give it a little bit of your time and it will be so worth it. I felt like I was on a roller coaster that never ended. It was so fun. Leigh Bardugo's writing is very fascinating and really cool and intricate. The story webbed itself so well that I could actually picture things that were going on, and I love the setting of a school atmosphere and everything about it, and the grays, and just I love this book. Following that, I read The Crash by Frida McFadden, and I would probably say no, didn't really love the story. I've talked about it a lot of times. I felt like it just didn't make sense. It was repetitive. It was easy to know what was going on, and it didn't really satisfy my soul at some point. Like, I could have read another book in replacement of that. It's just not worth your time to pick up. There's so many thrillers out there. There's so many better ones out there, and The Crash just wasn't it for me. I read Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. I would probably say maybe for this one. I had my ups and downs with this book. I really love the concept. It basically followed two people who could hear each other in each other's head, and I loved kind of being able to follow that along because I've never thought about that. If someone could hear every thought in my brain, like, that would be terrifying. So watching people have to navigate that was really funny, and the family was really cool, but I don't think I really loved the love aspect. The actual male main character, I didn't really love him either. It was fine, you know. It was a romance that was okay. Maybe if you want to pick it up, again, I don't think it's necessary. I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'd probably say maybe for this book. I think the storyline was cool. Basically, it follows a girl who her newly husband ends up disappearing, and so she goes through the grief of that and understands that, and then when she heals from it, she finds a man, they're engaged, and all of a sudden her old husband comes back into her life being like, I wasn't dead, here I am. You have to follow as she navigates these two loves and what she's going to do with it, and I probably would say it's a maybe. I didn't really connect to the book as much as I thought I would. I thought this be this like heavy heartbreaking story, and it really wasn't for me, and maybe that was my perception of it coming in kind of ruined that. That's why it's a maybe. After that, I read What Happens in Amsterdam by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I probably would say maybe as well. There were parts of this book I didn't really love, and parts of it I really did love, hence the maybe. I love the setting. Amsterdam is so cool. It basically follows this girl who her whole life kind of falls apart, and she decides she's going to go on a whim and move to Amsterdam, and she runs into her Dutch exchange student that her family had when she was in high school. It was her very first love, so you get to see that second chance from childhood to lovers, and there was a fake marriage and all this fun stuff. So it definitely was very comical, easy to follow along, very lighthearted read, but there were a lot of cringy moments between the couple, a lot of spicy scenes I didn't really love, and I had this face on while I was reading it. So that's why I say maybe, just because sometimes I didn't love it and sometimes I was having a ball. So it was just up in the air. It was all right for me. Then I read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is my second read. This is one of my favorite books, so I don't have much to say besides this is a must. This is a yes. It is a classic. It is hard to get into, especially now that we're reading so many books that are just very modern literature. Really nice to go back and see where origins are from. So go ahead and pick up Wuthering Heights. It's so amazing. The love depicted, the tragedy of love and generational trauma, and all these important themes about class and stuff is depicted so well in this book, and I highly recommend for everyone to read. We're losing crucial daylight here. The next book I read is The White Mary by Keela Solik, and I would probably say no for this book. It was heavier than I thought. Definitely read trigger warnings for this book if you choose to actually pick it up. It's about this journalist who, her favorite journalist actually committed suicide, and she doesn't believe that it's true, so she decides to go on this mission to Papua New Guinea where it was mentioned that he had committed that there. She visits a new place, she understands their culture, all this stuff, and honestly, besides just the heaviness of what I read in this book, the actual writing was very choppy for me. Keela Solik, the author, is actually a journalist, and it's very much reflective in this book. I never really was engaged. I never really loved it, and honestly, most of the time I was going like, can this book be over? So it's a no for me. The next book is also a no, which is Love Unscripted by Owen Nichols. It's a romance set in 2008 during the 2008 election where Obama became president, and it's two people who met at that election and their relationship throughout the years and eventually the undoing of the relationship. So he's going back in time to how the relationship started in every little moment to see where things went wrong. And with this one, Owen Nichols is also a scriptwriter. Again, it's very much reflective in this book. It felt very choppy. I didn't connect to the characters. I actually despised the male main character, and for me, I didn't feel impactful. It didn't feel gut-wrenching as much as I thought it would, and honestly, it was just kind of a drab. On September 23rd, I finished Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I think I love this book because I love the movie. Don't get me wrong, the book is just as phenomenal. Her writing is really, really good. There are a lot of good romances out there, and this one's just kind of in the middle for that. I'm gonna clump the Natural series together, and honestly, I would say yes. This is such a fun read. It's basically about this gang of teenagers who have these like talents, and FBI recruits them to be in this program to solve cold cases. It's so fun. It's a good time, kind of like Powerless. It's just a good time. You turn off your brain, you enjoy it. There's a lot of mystery. If you love Criminal Minds, this series is for you. I would highly recommend to any level of reader. Hey guys, isn't this fun? I lost all my lighting. So we have this like nice ambient lighting that's actually around my head instead of on my face. Let's just crank out these last couple ones. I read The Girl on the Train. I'd probably say maybe. I feel like with this one, there were moments where I didn't really love the book, and then other times I really did. I did listen to an audiobook, so I don't know if that changes anything. It was a really interesting story to follow along. Again, I didn't love the female main character. I think all her decisions were dumb. That made me also kind of like dislike the storyline a little bit, and I don't really remember much of the ending. I feel like the ending was a little bit rushed compared to all of the stuff that we had like leading up to the story. Then I read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Pawson, and I would say yes for this one, specifically during October, during the spooky season. If you're just reading it during any other time, I'd probably say maybe. I feel like it was a fun little quirky romance. The magical element here is that the girl can actually see ghosts, and she sees the ghost of her lover in the book. She has to figure out why she's seeing this ghost. So for that reason, I feel like any other time it just wouldn't be as impactful or as fun. Besides that, the storyline's okay. I really love the family and like the quirkiness of it. Then I read Twice by Mitch Albom. This is his newest release, and I would highly recommend this one. This one's a yes for me. The storyline was so good. I felt like it really depicted loving in your 20s and also struggling in your 20s while you're together with someone else. So like living together, financially struggling, things like that. The twist here is that he can do things twice in his life. Kind of like that question of like, if you could go back, would you change anything? That aspect of it woven into a story that's fun, entrancing, and really good. I would highly recommend this book. Then I read The Only One Left, and that is also a yes for me. I feel like this is actually one of the very first thrillers that really got me. I also listened to this in audiobook, but I was gasping all the time. I felt the tension. I was digging for answers. I was trying to figure it out, and I don't normally do that. So obviously this one was really up there, and Riley Sager's writing and the way that he created the story was really, really beautiful, and honestly, so many twists and turns. In November, I read The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. I would probably say maybe. I know that sounds a little crazy. I haven't gone into the storyline long enough to understand the impact of it. I also read an audiobook, which I think I might reread as a physical book, just because I think I missed a lot of the points there. So I think that's kind of why I say maybe, because it didn't impact me as much, but I thought the storyline was good. I was really fully absorbed, but I think I would have actually enjoyed it more if I read the book. I feel like fantasy is kind of hard in an audiobook if you don't already know what's going on. I also read This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I probably would say no for this one. I feel like when I say no, it's because I don't love the main character. For this, it is just like that, because I didn't like the main character. I also didn't love the writing style of this one, so it is a classic, so it is a little bit different writing, but for me, the writing was just kind of unbearable to read through. A lot of just weird moments where he'd write like a poem, things didn't make sense. He'd go from like a third person to a first person. There was just a lot of back and forth that I didn't really grasp the importance of it and why it was behind that. I think if I did, I would have loved it a little bit more, but I didn't. I read A Farewell to Arms, and I probably would say maybe for this one. I feel like it was a really good romance, especially being a classic. I actually was absorbed in the story. I read it pretty fast. I really love the characters. I think the storyline was really cool. It was World War II. An American falls in love with an English nurse, and you get to follow their life and what it means to be in the war during World War II. And I feel like it was a really good depiction of it, especially because it was released closer to that time period. So that also just like added an element of almost being like a historical fiction. And so I really, really love that. I say maybe just because it isn't the best romance. I feel like there were so many different endings that he wrote, and at the end in my book, I saw all the alternate endings, and I really love some of the other ones rather than the one he wrote. The one he wrote kind of felt a little empty for me, I would say, especially after reading the other ones. I think if I didn't read the other ones, maybe I would have actually like the ending a little bit. I don't know. I read Champion by Mary Lou. This is the last book in the Legend series. I would say maybe for this one. I feel like if you've already gone through the series at that point, might as well just finish it. It was a really good book. I also listened to this one in audiobook. I feel like I've kind of grown out of these books, so I was kind of just doing it to kind of feel a little bit more accomplished about reading the series. I really enjoyed the aspect of it, just the nostalgia behind it for me personally, but the storyline itself was alright, and I really liked it, kind of giving like a Hunger Games-esque sort of divergent political side of things, which was really fun to read about. Again, it's YA, so some of the things that they kind of argued about or talked about was a little bit more young adult. So that's kind of why I say maybe. Then I read The Santa Suit by Mary Kay Andrews, and I say yes for the holiday season. I feel like this is the perfect bite-sized romance. It's only, I think it's under 200 pages, I believe, so it's really good to do if you plan to travel during the holidays or something. It's just a quick, easy book you can throw and read and get into the holiday spirit with it. It was fun, it was whimsical, it was quirky, there were cheesy moments. Also in December, I read A Holly Jolly Diwali by Sonia Lally, and I definitely would recommend this one. This is a yes. This was a romance that I haven't heard anyone talk about, and the way that she writes is beautiful. He kind of reminded me of Abby Jimenez's writing style, and I really enjoyed it. And there were heavy topics about culture and identity and class and finding yourself, whether it's in your 30s, whether it's in your 20s, whether you're in high school. That identity crisis aspect of it I really enjoyed, and it was such a good book, and I learned a lot about a culture I've never learned about, and I love that she depicted it in such a beautiful way. And I'm still currently reading for December. That is my updated yes, no, or maybe for my 2025 reads. I know this lighting is crazy and weird, but hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. Okay, I love you. Bye.